اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته العدل الحسن صاحب زمان روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى الدين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريب الغرباء، يا مدام على ساكن كربلاء، فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي يا سادتي، فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال مولانا سيد الشهداء عليه السلام: إني لم أخرج عشرا ولا بترا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما، وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي رسول الله، أريد أن أأمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر، وأسير بسيرة جدي رسول الله وأبي علي بن أبي طالب، صدق الإمام وآمنا به. نوروا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد.
Purpose and the goal behind the revolution of Sayyid al-Shuhada, the most greatest revolution to have taken place, mutlaqan. And you find that in order for us to understand the vastness and the greatness of the principles encompassed within the revolution of Imam al-Hussein, we need to study the extent of the revolution or the magnitude of the words which are an encompassment of the revolution through the Quran. As we mentioned last night, that the words of Ahlul Bayt are an explanation of the Quran in its entirety, that the book is the Quran Shamit, while Ahlul Bayt is the Quran al-Natiq. Those juz'iyat which you do not find within the Quran, those minor principles or those detailed principles which you do not find in the Quran, you find them in the words of Ahlul Bayt. Therefore, in order for us to understand the vastness of the revolution of Imam al-Hussein, it is absolutely imperative that we understand the mission statement of Imam al-Hussein from the words that he has uttered and the wasiyah that he has left behind, and compare that with the Quran. You find that as Imam al-Hussein was leaving, alayhi salam, was leaving from Medina, he makes an announcement of the values and the purpose and the mission statement of this movement in his will, which he leaves behind to his brother Muhammad ibn Hanafiya. He says to him, وَإِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ بَطِرًا وَإِنِّي لَا أَخْرُجْ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَطِرًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Imam al-Hussein makes this declaration where he says that I am not rising, I am not creating this movement without a purpose. Neither am I rising up in a movement because I am an oppressor, and neither am I doing it to create chaos on earth. Rather, وَإِنَّمَا أَدَوَاتُ الْحَسْرِ. This phrase innama that we come across within the Quran and in Arabic language, ulama of Arabic grammar will tell you that the word innama denotes exclusivity. Innama, exclusively, Imam al-Hussein says, my exclusive mission and my goal in my uprising is to seek Islah in the ummah of my grandfather. Therefore, we need to understand that the entire revolution of Imam al-Hussein revolves around this concept of Islah. What is the meaning of Islah? What are the different contexts in which this word Islah is used within the Quran? Insha'Allah, for the time that we have tonight, we shall try to look through 3 different dimensions and contexts of the word Islah, and through this understanding we are able to get a glimpse of the vastness of the revolution of Imam al-Hussein, the vastness of the principles encompassed within the revolution of Imam al-Hussein. All this with aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When it comes to understanding the different contexts in which Islam is used within the Quran, we begin with Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 220, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْيَتَامَى قُلْ إِصْلَاحٌ لَهُمْ خَيْرٌ وَإِن تُخَالِطُوهُمْ فَإِخْوَانُكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ الْمُفْسِدِينَ مِنَ الْمُصْلِحِ وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَأَعْنَتَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. For our entire debate is about understanding the meaning and the different dimensions accompanied by the word Islah. And Islah is the basis of the revolution of Imam al-Hussein. For in this verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 220, you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states by saying, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْيَتَامَى قُلْ إِصْلَاحٌ لَهُمْ خَيْرٌ وَإِن تُخَالِطُوهُمْ فَإِخْوَانُكُمْ. They come and they ask you about the orphans. Tell them that Islah lahum is better for them. In tukhalituhum fa ikhwanukum. Mufassirin of the Quran come forward and say that the word Islah within this verse of the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah 220, represents arranging the financial welfare of the aitam. So therefore, the word Islah over here means, yani, when they ask you about the orphans, then say to them that the financial management of the affairs of the aitam is necessary, and that they should encompass them in their affairs. وَإِن تُخَالِطُوهُمْ فَإِخْوَانُكُمْ. Encompass them in their affairs, for indeed they are your brothers. So therefore, the first element of the word Islah encompasses financial management of the affairs of the orphans. And intum, Ahibba'i, you see that in this day and age, you will find that perhaps one of the most important tasks that has befallen upon the Muslim Ummah in general and upon the Shia Muslim in particular is the issue of orphans. And to look at the statistics that are published for orphans across the globe. In Janabak, you find that in Iraq, just by itself, statistics and human rights organizations have published reports where they claim that there are 3 million orphans in Iraq. Another 2 million of them widows. And this number exponentially grows on a daily basis. Between brackets. And so when you see that the Nawasib, who are the Anjasun Najasat, more najis than the Ainul Najasa, the Nasibi, when they carry out all these suicide bombings, and they carry out these acts of terror against innocent people in Iraq or outside Iraq, whether they are targeting Muslims or non-Muslims. And so, when you read that a bomb has gone off and 200 people have died, for example, and another 150 are injured, don't think that these 150 people who are injured are regular injuries that are scratches and cuts. La! Some of these injuries results to permanent disability, permanent amputation, and a lot of these injuries that occur, you will find that statistics have shown that a very small percentage of those who are counted as the initially injured actually survive. You find that perhaps there is a great taqseer, shortcoming from the side of the media when it comes to reporting on the reality of the deaths and the catastrophe that takes place on the ground. For instance, you see that in Iraq today, 3 million aitam, at a very minimum and a very conservative figure. Another 2 million widows. Ya akhi, a nation of 5 million aitam and aramila. Whose responsibility is it to provide and ensure the financial well-being of these 5 million individuals? Particularly when you see inside of Iraq that a majority of the people who are victims of violence are those people whose crime was nothing except that they say, Ashhadu anna Aliya waliyullah. They have been killed because of their creed. And if they are killed because of their wilayah of Ahlul Bayt, ya ikhwani, these are people who are counted as the aitam of Ali Muhammad. These are the orphans of Imam Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman. And it is our responsibility collectively as a ummah to pay attention to the affairs of these aitam. Establishing charity organizations, supporting charity organizations that already exist. And you see inside of Iraq, you have the Hashd al-Sha'bi, this group of pious mu'mineen who have responded to the call of the Marja'iyya, this group of pious mu'mineen who are protecting the haram, which are sharif, the divine harams inside of Iraq. These people are killed at the hands of these terrorists and these nawasib. Ya akhi, who is there to take care of their wives and their children? Yani ma'akul, today Is it logical? Does it make sense? Where is the dhamir? Where is the conscience of the Shia Ummah that when you have a person who's become shaheed while defending the haram of Imam al-Askari, he leaves behind a family, his children are begging for bread on the street? A person whose father gave his life defending the institution of ziyarah. Whose responsibility is it to take care of these aitam? Ikhwani, we need to feel this sense of responsibility and social responsibility towards the orphans, an injunction within the Quran and an element from the many elements of the revolution of Imam al-Hussein. For you find that an important element is the financial administration of the orphans. And you'll find that within this field, there is a lot of strategization that is required. Because managing the financial affairs of the orphans in particular, and those who are less well off in general, is an issue that needs strategy. At the end of the day, the goal of Islam was never to create an ummah that is dependent on financial aid. The goal of an ummah, the goal of Rasulullah, the vision of Amir al-Mu'mineen was to create an ummah that is financially sufficient. And this includes not only supporting in terms of contributions, and this is very good, contribution of clothing and fooding and building shelter for the orphans and the less well off, but at the same time investment in infrastructure that emphasizes on education. Because the goal of administering the financial affairs of the aitam and the less well off is to be able to allow them to progress such that they themselves are able to build a nation that will take forward the creed and the madhab of Ahlul Bayt to another level. You find that there is great taqseer on our side in regards to managing the affairs. In fact, Ikhwani, if you were to ponder over the ahkam of Islam, you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed great importance within the ahkam in ensuring the financial well-being of those who are less well off from within the Shia Ummah in particular and the Muslim Ummah in general. Enter Janabak, have a look at the Furu'ud-Din and the Ahkam Islamiyah. You find that one of the greatest and most important aspects of Furu'ud-Din is khums. From the khums, you find that from all the avenues and the spendings that are warranted and that are given to us through the guidelines of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt and their Nawab and the Maraja, you find that a great part of the khums is used for building educational and religious institutions. A big part of the khums is used, for example, to provide basic security and shelter to those who are from the Sadat, if it is from the Sahm al-Imam, and to the non-Sadat, for example, from parts of the Sahm al-Imam. You find that this khums, which is a wajib from the wajibat, the spending of this khums, the goal is to strengthen the financial affairs of the Muslim Ummah. Inter Janabak, look at another wajib from the wajibat, zakat. Where is the spending of zakat supposed to be used? Fi sabil Allah. What is this sabil Allah? You refer back to the hadith of Ahlul Bayt. It's building social infrastructures that allow an ummah to progress as an ummah. You find this together in almost all ahkam sharia. Inter Janabak, your hajj is not complete until you do what we call the qurbani. This manasik of hajj, after having completed the tawaf and the sa'i and your wukuf in Arafah and the jamarat in Mina, ya subhanallah, after having spent thousands of pounds or dollars to make this journey towards hajj, at the end Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this hajj is not makbool until you perform a sacrifice. Ya akhi, where is this sacrifice spent? Feeding the poor. Enter, you return back to ahkam of Shahrul Ramadan. Enter Janabak, you are not able to be in a position to fast due to sickness, whether a mother is nursing or in a state of pregnancy, in exchange for this exemption from fasting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts a system of fidya. The 750 grams, ajib. 750 grams where? To spend on the poor people. Person misses his fast intentionally. He's not or he wants to keep the qada because of the fast he's missed intentionally. You find the ahkam or the masail shari'ah tell you have to feed 60 people. In every aspect of the sharia you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one way or the other invites the Muslim ummah to come and to spend money on those who are less well off. Even within the mustahabbat, when a person wants his hajat to be accepted, when he wants his du'as to be accepted, you go back to the adab and the akhlaq of asking du'a and seeking hajat. Hatman you find within the hadith that feed the mu'mineen and the mu'minat. Yani, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to say through all these rulings? That ya janabak inta, you are not able to seek proximity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so long as you are indifferent to the affairs of the Muslim ummah. This is the importance the Lord of the universe and the Creator is placed upon solidifying the financial situation of our fellow brothers and sisters. And you find that this ba'ath in itself is amik and deep, because there are different levels. At a social level, at a family level, at an individual level, and then you have at a political level. Ya akhi, when today you come and you look at the despicable state of the Muslim countries in the world, why do you find that a number of nations are slaves of colonial powers when it comes to foreign policy? Because their economy is weak, because their financial government and their financial administration is weak, and hence when they are economically and financially weak, they become slaves of those who want to manipulate them and stronger. This is clear than the rays of the sun. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You find that this is the first dimension of the word islah. Yani, the financial management of the affairs of the orphans in particular, and of those Muslimin and Muslimat who are less well off at a general level. The second meaning or the second dimension of the word islah, which you find again within the Quran in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Surah Al-A'raf verse 85. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, wa ila Madyan akhahum Shu'ayba qala ya qawm i'budullah ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh qad ja'atkum bayyinatun min rabbikum fa'awful kayla wal mizana wa la tabkhasun nasa ashya'a وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. Over here you find that this verse of the Quran speaks about the primary message of Nabi Shu'ayb, Nabiullah Shu'ayb towards the people. You find that Nabi Shu'ayb was sent to the city of Madian. And the goal of Nabi Shu'ayb's bi'thah, the main message that, or a part of the message that Nabi Shu'ayb carried towards his people, number one was in the concept of Tawheed. Ya qawm i'budullah ma lakum min ilahin ghayruh, to establish the fundamental unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qad ja'atkum bayyinatun min rabbikum. In fact, the proofs in establishing the existence of a God are absolutely logical and clear beyond refute. And then he goes on to say, فَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ وَالْمِيزَانَ وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا. Therefore, O people, after your conviction or having had conviction in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understanding the element of accountability towards Allah, O people, what do? Awful kayla wal mizan. Do not manipulate the scales. Kayl wal mizan, the scales when conducting business. You'll find that back in the day when you wanted to buy, and in many parts of the world even today, in Janabak you want to buy 1 kilo of rice, you want to buy 1 kilo of fruit, for example. You find that in many parts of the country, when you go into the markets, they weigh the kilo for you. They weigh the actual commodity for you and then charge you accordingly. So what used to happen during the time of Nabi Shu'aib is that the people of Madian, there were communities of businessmen and traders who performed deceit or were engaged in deceit at the highest level. They used to manipulate the scales when they used to sell their commodities. Therefore, you would pay, for example, for a commodity which is equivalent to 1 kilo, but he weighs for you, for example, 750 grams and charges you 1 kilo. Deceit. فَلَا تَبْخُسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. And Nabi Shu'aib says to them, O people, community of businessmen, community of traders, do not deceive the people in your trade. وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا. Do not create fasad on this dunya after islah. Islah over here is meaning what? Yani Nabi Shu'aib built and established the fundamental principles of a fair and a just economic system. Therefore, the second connotation of the word Islah is the establishment of a fair and a just economic system. In Janabak you find that Islam in its entirety has given us, through the teachings of Rasulullah and the teachings of Amirul Mu'mineen, the best economic system that perhaps human history has ever seen. You come and you see the capitalist model in which we live, in which we are expected to survive, in which we are expected to thrive. You find that in the 21st century, despite all the advancements in technology, and despite all the advancements in knowledge, and so on and so forth, statistics state that as of 2005, 100 million people from the global population were homeless. Homeless, yani they don't have a roof over their head. 100 million people from Bani Adam. Yani 1 in 65 as per 2005. Now perhaps the figures have gone higher. Furthermore, they come forward with statistics that close to 1 billion people in the world today live in inadequate conditions, either squatters or temporary settlements or tents or whatnot. You find that we're surrounded with an economic system that thrives on deceit. We don't want to step on anybody's toes, but you look into the world of marketing and you look into the world of branding, and if you are truthful to yourself, is marketing anything other than deceiving a consumer into buying something that is absolutely useless? Isn't this economic system that we live in built upon exploitation? Homeless people. In this country in itself, for example, you find that one of the greatest tasks and perhaps a lifelong attempt is to secure a roof over your head. to be able to be a homeowner in terms of the system that we live. Whereas when you come to Islam, you find by way of example that the system of home ownership is absolutely different to the model which we are exposed to in this day and age through the teachings and the system of Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen. And so you find that in Islam, being a homeowner is a fundamental necessity and a basic right, just like the way you have the basic right of access to clean drinking water. Just like the way you should have unrestricted right, and it is your fundamental right to be able to breathe this air, in the same way owning a house is the same category of your rights as for the teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Rasulullah. You find that hadith sharif narrated by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he states, Al-ardu lillah wa man ammaraha. The land belongs to Allah and to the people who have ability to develop it. Through this one hadith, if it is to be implemented in this day and age, ikhwani, saddiquni, believe me, that we are able to live in a world free of homelessness in this century. With this one hadith of Rasulullah, you find that he says, Al-ardu lillah, ownership of land, number one, belongs to Allah as the creator. وَمَنْ أَمَّرَهَا, and those individuals, the human population that is able to develop it, they automatically by default have ownership over that land. According to the economic principles of Rasulullah, Ya Akhi, there is nothing like a land tax. In the economic system of Rasulullah, there is nothing like stamp duty. In the economic system of Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen, there is nothing like a mortgage system where a person spends his entire life and a majority of his income sheltering the roof. La. Within the system of Amir al-Mu'mineen, government system of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you have a ministry of land that works together with the department of a census, and they analyze the needs of the citizens of the state and allocate land to them. The government is not an owner of this land. Allah gave ownership of the land to the dwellers of this earth in their entirety. And therefore land is granted to them as per their needs. And according to Islam, the only cost that is to be incurred in being a homeowner is the cost of building the house. Yani cement, bricks and whatnot that you have. And this was the system that was established during the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, when the Khilafah was granted to him in Kufa. Research through Islamic history and find how many cases of homelessness were there during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is the Islam that we are supposed to provide to the non-Muslims. These are the rulings of Islam. These are the economic solutions that the teaching of Ahlul Bayt has given us to make the world a better place. Where are the Muslim economists when it comes to granting global solutions? If you were to speak with a non-Muslim economist and you were to share with him policies like these, what would be their vision and their opinion about Islam? Have you found any government in the world that charges taxes on savings and not on gross earnings? Each and all of us pay taxes, Ya Akhi. The tax is taken from your gross income before you even smell the money, Ya Akhi. 20, 30% is given to the government. Islam, the government of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the government of Rasulullah was the only government in the history of humankind that taxes its people based on its savings. Ya Akhi, on your savings, and that even 20%. And Amir al-Mu'mineen on this system succeeded in making a poverty government in the 4 years that he had. And the Kalam, this is a lot, and there are many lectures that were delivered in the past that talk about this majal. We will bypass this so that we have enough time for the masail for tonight. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Therefore, Ikhwani, you now begin to understand through the Quran the vastness of the principles accompanied within the revolution of Sayyid al-Shuhada. For you find that the first meaning of Islam, managing the financial affairs of the Aitam. Number two, the meaning of Islam, to build and to establish a fair and a just economic system that allows mankind in its entirety to prosper, as opposed to a minority at the expense of a majority. This is number two. Number three, in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا وَادْعُوهُ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا إِنَّ رَحْمَةَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ مِّنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not create fasad, or do not perform fasad in the world after Islah. When you refer back to the Mufassirin of the Quran, for example, Mullah Fayd al-Kashani, rahmatullah alayhi, in his tafsir, Tafsir al-Safi, and Tafsir al-Safi, waqi'an, one of the most beautiful tafsir that you would come across. Majority of the tafsir is tafsir by riwayat of Ahlul Bayt. What every verse of the Quran, or majority of the verses of the Quran, what does Imam Baqir have to say? What does Imam Sadiq have to say? What does Imam Qadim have to say? What does Amir al-Mu'mineen have to say? Tafsir of the Quran through hadith. Mullah Fayd al-Kashani, in the tafsir of this verse, describes ifsad or fasad as being a state where disobedience towards Allah and the indulgence of sin is prevalent. Ma'asiyah. Ifsad or fasad is a state in which committing sins and violations against the rules of Allah is prevalent, is the norm. Whereas Islah means, or Islah denotes a state where the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the holy books and through the teachings of the Holy Prophet is established and prevalent in the earth. Therefore, Islah has to do with the establishment of the rule of Allah and the teachings of Allah on earth. And Ifsad has to do what? With the establishment of an environment of sin. If we understand this through this verse of the Quran, now we come back to the mission statement of Imam al-Hussein. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Sayyid al-Shuhada says, وَإِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَتِرًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَإِنَّمَا أَخْرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Imam al-Hussein states over here, طَلَبُ الْإِصْلَاحِ. We are now joining this verse back to our understanding of Islah. Imam al-Hussein is stating that the purpose of my revolution and the purpose of my sacrifice in Karbala is to establish the pure teachings of this deen encompassed within the Quran and within the seerah of Rasulullah. Yani Imam al-Hussein is standing up in an environment where the Muslim Ummah had trampled upon the virtuous teachings of Rasulullah. He is standing up at a time where the Muslim Ummah is engrossed and encompassed in the disobedience and sinning Allah. And now the fundamental basis of this revolution is to establish the virtuous original teachings of Rasulullah. And from here you have the understanding of the word reformation. Reformation yani what? A state of sin, a state of disobedience towards Allah which is prevalent. You now want to change it such that it returns back to the original virtuous divine teachings that are encompassed within Islam. And you find that Imam al-Hussein now explains the meaning of Islah within the rest of his statement. We have established that Islah means what? Establishing the rule of Allah and the teachings of Allah on earth within the Muslim Ummah. Tayyib, from everything within Islam which had been turned upside down, such that it was in a state of fasad. What was the key behind this Islah? What concept of Islah, Ya Aba Abdullah, were you trying to implement, such that if you implement it, you are able to achieve this reformation in its entirety? He explains it. وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُرِيدُ أَنْ أَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ Number one, أمر بالمعروف. وَأَنْهَى عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ Number two, نَحْيَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُسِيرُ فِي سِيرَةِ جَدِّ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ وَأَبِي عَلِيَّ بْنَ أَبِي طَالِبٍ. Imam al-Hussein is saying that my goal behind the revolution of Ashura is to establish the teachings of Allah on earth and to implement the seerah of Rasulullah and the seerah of my father Ali ibn Abi Talib. Meaning what? Ya Ikhwani, if we ponder over the mission statement of Imam al-Hussein, he is making a declaration that I am coming out in the Ummah to establish the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen after the people deviated from it.
Subhanallah, Subhanallah.
Yani, Imam al-Hussein was the shaheed of the message of Eid al-Ghadir. Imam al-Hussein sacrificed his family and his life in order to keep alive the message of Eid al-Ghadir, in order to uphold the flag of the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. What is this wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Wallahi al-Azim, we didn't understand the wilayah. Sayyid al-Shuhada, who is Shabab Ahl al-Jannah, gives his life for the wilayah of Mawlana Amir al-Mu'mineen. Karbala, Imam al-Hussein, shaheed of wilayah. Refer back to the Quran and these verses of Eid al-Ghadir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. Ya akhi, refer back, you contemplate over the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم. Today I have perfected and completed your religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never said this for Ibrahim and he was Khalilullah. Allah never said to Nabi Musa even though he was Kalimullah. Allah never said to Isa even though he was Ruhullah that اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم. The religion and the message of Ibrahim was naqis, message of Musa naqis, message Isa naqis. Ya akhi, message of Rasulullah was naqis, was incomplete. Why? Prior to Ghadir, people were fasting, people were going for Hajj, people were giving zakat, people were doing Sawm, were doing Salat. Still Allah says this message, this Islam, this deen is not complete except through the wilayah of Mawlana Amir al-Mu'mineen. The completion of the message of Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, Nuh was all through the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And this is what Imam al-Hussein stood to show the people. How many people within the wider Muslim Ummah are aware of the reality of Eid al-Qadir? You find that in ulama of the Amma, who are not even from the Shia. You refer back to Tariq of Ibn Asakir, you refer back to Durr al-Manthur of Suyuti, you refer back to Yanabi al-Mawadda of Alama al-Kunduzi. Ulama of the Amma say that this part of the verse of the Quran, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati, was revealed upon the bay'ah that was given to Amir al-Mu'mineen in Eid al-Qadir. How many people within the wider Muslim Ummah know about this reality of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Whose responsibility is it to guide them? Whose responsibility is it, with love and akhlaq, to bring them towards the nur and the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt? Ikhwani, if we were to take lessons from the revolution of Imam al-Hussein, a big aspect from what we have taken today, number one, Islah, paying attention to the financial affairs of the Muslim Ummah. And number two, Tabligh, and spreading the wilayah and inviting people towards the wilayah of Ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Look at the tragedies of the Muslim Ummah as a consequence of them abandoning the wilayah of Mawlana Amir al-Mu'mineen. The event of Karbala happened only 50 years, half a century, of the martyrdom of Rasulullah. Within a span of half a century, this ummah that are the believers of Rasulullah, who say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, who say Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, are the same people who are willing to kill the grandson of Rasulullah, Sibt Rasulullah. This is the consequence, and this is the potential danger which an ummah can get through when it abandons Amir al-Mu'mineen and takes imam other than the imams of Ahlul Bayt. Look at the devastation and the catastrophe that is facing the Islamic ummah today. Within this situation and this circumstance, you find that Imam al-Hussein blatantly rejected to give bay'ah to Yazid al-La'in. And he had to migrate from the city of Medina towards Mecca. In the meantime, it is narrated that up to 18,000 people from Kufa had written letters to Imam al-Hussein inviting him to come to Kufa to become their leader, such that they would pledge allegiance to him and they would rise in opposition against Yazid in particular and Bani Umayyah in general. 18,000 people. Imam al-Hussein sends his ambassador by the name of Muslim bin Aqil. Sayyid Muslim bin Aqil. And tonight's Masa'ib is over Sayyid Muslim bin Aqil, the first shaheed from the shuhada of Karbala from Bani Hashim, Imam Muslim bin Aqil. This Muslim bin Aqil alayhi salam was married to Sayyidah Ruqayyah, one of the daughters of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed them with 6 children. 1 daughter by the name Sayyidah Hamida and 5 sons. 3 of whom were shaheed in Karbala. And inshallah we shall mention their heroic stances in the coming nights inshallah. And 2 of them, the Tiflan Muhammad and Ibrahim, who were killed in the prisons of Kufa or in the city of Kufa, whose Masa'ib we will recite tomorrow. Yesterday we spoke about the concept of Nasrallah, providing victory and assisting the Ahlul Bayt. Muslim bin Aqil, Sayyid Muslim bin Aqil, was that person who sacrificed his entire nasl in the way of Imam al-Hussein. To refer back to the books of history. See how many children are there from the nasl of Muslim bin Aqil, or a shajara that goes back to the lineage. Continuity of the lineage is through the daughter Sayyidah Hamida, but his sons, his entire nasl, fida'an lil Hussein. The historians mention that Imam al-Hussein sends Muslim bin Aqil as his ambassador to Kufa to go and to verify the situation and to assess the ideological and the political state of those people who have written letters and pledged allegiance to Imam al-Hussein. Imam Muslim bin Aqil reaches Kufa on the 5th day of Shawwal in the year 60 AH. Until the time of his martyrdom in Dhul Hijjah, around the day of Arafah. Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah and Dhul Hijjah. 3 months Muslim bin Aqil spent in the city of Kufa. The narrations mention that initially when he came into the city of Kufa, he was living as a guest in the house of Hani ibn Urwa. And he was living in the house of Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, Afwan. And he used the house of Mukhtar as the base to rally the supporters and gain bay'ah for Imam al-Hussein, such that 18,000 people, as we said, had pledged allegiance to Muslim bin Aqil. The governor of Kufa at that time was a person by the name of Nu'man ibn Bashir. Nu'man ibn Bashir was a very weak leader and was not able to control the population or the uprising of Muslim bin Aqil. So the Munafiqeen of Kufa, the likes of Umar ibn Sa'ad al-La'in and Muhammad ibn Ash'at al-La'in, they wrote letters to Yazid complaining to them about the incapability of Nu'man ibn Bashir to control the affairs inside of Kufa. So the narrations mention Yazid al-La'in consulted with his companion by the name of Sarjon. Sarjon made the advice that remove Nu'man bin Bashir, dismiss him from government, and instead you should bring Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad al-La'in. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad was the governor of Basra. So that way the provinces of Basra and the province of Kufa were united under one governor. United, yani they were consolidated as one big governorate. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad comes to Kufa, and now the scales of the people who gave bay'ah changed. This is one of our themes in the future nights. Remember this and keep this lesson close to your heart, because this is going to be necessary to decide whether we are from the army of Imam or not. During the time of difficulty, do you remain steadfast in regards to your religion, or do you compromise your religion? Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad comes into Kufa and he makes an announcement, general announcement from Masjid al-Kufa. He says, "O people of Kufa, there is a massive army from Sham coming that has been sent by Yazid, and if you rebel against me and rebel against the authority of Yazid, then this army of Sham with all its vastness is going to plunder you and is going to attack you and demolish you and your families." Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad takes a census of all the people inside of Kufa and asks for their allegiances and their loyalties, and anyone who is found to have any sort of affiliation with Ali ibn Abi Talib or the teachings of Ali ibn Abi Talib or with Muslim bin Aqil, his house will be confiscated, his name will be cut out from the stipend given in Baytul Mal, and his blood becomes halal. Situation, you can say, where there was military rule inside of Kufa, and fear was the predominant sentiment amongst the people. You find that Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As soon as the people heard about the reality of the situation and the fact that if they stand up together with Muslim bin Aqil, it is going to cost them their lives and they are going to lose out on their dunya, you find that from these 18,000 people, now they begin to abandon Imam Muslim bin Aqil one by one, until the narration states that Muslim bin Aqil, I will summarize because our time is almost finishing. Muslim bin Aqil, once Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad came into the city of Kufa, left the house of Mukhtar and was living in a state of hiding in the house of Hani ibn Urwa. When it was discovered that Hani ibn Urwa is hosting Muslim bin Aqil, Hani ibn Urwa was arrested. Upon his arrest, Hani ibn Urwa was interrogated and was tortured to the highest level. The hadith say he was almost 90, over the age of 90. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad hit Hani ibn Urwa on the face and on the nose with a metal rod, making this old person bleed. He was tortured to the extent that at the end of this torturing, pieces of flesh were hanging from his skin and his forehead over the beard. Look at the tadhiyah and the sacrifices that people have given in history in regards to the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt. As soon as Muslim bin Aqil was aware of the arrest and the persecution of Hani ibn Urwa, Muslim bin Aqil called out for a great revolution to take place in Kufa and for the palace of Ibn Ziyad to be captured. The narration mentions from 18,000 people, 6,000 people defaulted, with 12,000 people arranged in different calibers and in different war formats. Muslim bin Aqil surrounds the Qasr or the Darul Imara in which Ibn Ziyad was living in. Muhammad ibn Ash'af, Umar ibn Sa'ad al-La'in, Shimr al-Dil Joshan, the likes of these started to infiltrate amongst these supporters of Muslim bin Aqil, scaring them, increasing the rumors of the coming of the army of Sham because of their fear, while they were in a state of siege, having sieged the Darul Imara due to the lack of Iman and the nifaq that was inside their heart. The people begin to abandon Muslim bin Aqil one by one. Father comes and tells his son, leave this army. Mother comes and tells the son, leave the army. A wife comes to the husband and says that what will we do once you leave us and you are shaheed? Like this, fear and hubbud dunya, one by one they begin to abandon Imam Muslim bin Aqil. The historians mention at the time of Maghrib, Muslim bin Aqil is left with 30 people behind him. Allah. Muslim bin Aqil goes into Masjid al-Kufa and he recites the Salatul Maghrib, 30 people behind him. He completes the Salatul Isha, he turns around, only 3 people next to Muslim bin Aqil. Shaheed Muslim bin Aqil, Gharib, that one who was deceived by an ummah that never cared for the relationship of Ahlul Bayt. They never cared for this mawadda that was mentioned within the Quran. Muslim bin Aqil comes out of the mosque, he's by himself. Wa Ghariba. The ambassador of Imam al-Hussein in the morning, who had an army of 12,000, is left without anybody. He looks around the streets of Kufa, he's all by himself, not knowing where to go and where to walk. Gharib Muslim bin Aqil in the darkness of the night walks through the alleyways of Kufa until he stops at a house and he sits at the front doorstep. The woman, the owner of the house, comes out. This woman by the name of Taw'a. She looks at Muslim bin Aqil and she says to him, "Oh man, who are you? I do not permit you to sit at the door of my house." Muslim bin Aqil looks at her, he didn't say anything. He says to her, "Oh man, do you not go back to your family?" At this point, Muslim bin Aqil looked at her and said to her, "I am a gharib and a stranger in Kufa without a family. If you can feed me or you can quench my thirst with a glass of water." The woman brings water for Muslim bin Aqil. She asks him, "Who are you, oh man?" Muslim bin Aqil says that I am from the family of Rasulullah. I am from the family of Aqil, the family of Abu Talib. She says, "You are Muslim bin Aqil?" He says, "Yes, I am that Muslim who was deceived by the people of Kufa and have nowhere to live." The lady Taw'a brings Muslim bin Aqil into the house. She says to him, "O Muslim, do shafa'ah for me with your grandfather by the sake of my hosting for you." Muslim bin Aqil is in her house. She grants him a room at the end of the house. This is the night of the Shahada of Muslim bin Aqil. She brings for him food. Muslim bin Aqil refuses to eat the food. He spends the entire night in a state of dua and salat and ruku and munajat until the son of this woman, Taw'a La'in, comes into the house. He sees that the mother is entering and coming out of her room. She says, "Who is inside the room? What are you hiding?" She refuses to tell him. Upon the insistence, she says to him, "I swear to you by Allah that do not tell anyone, but Muslim bin Aqil is seeking refuge in our house." This person, the son of this woman Taw'a, was a La'in and from the army of Ibn Ziyad. The next day at the time of Fajr, he goes to the palace of Ibn Ziyad and he says to him that I know the whereabouts of Muslim bin Aqil and he is hiding in my house. Ibn Ziyad sends 300 horsemen to go to the house of Taw'a and to kill Muslim bin Aqil. The narrations mention that the time of Fajr had set in. Muslim bin Aqil had recited the Salatul Fajr. He was performing his du'as. As he was reciting the du'a and reciting the Quran, he heard the trampling of the horses outside the house. When he heard the trampling of the horses, he said, "And now my time has come to meet Rasulullah. My time has come to meet Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Muslim bin Aqil stood up from the Musalla. He put on his helmet for war. He put on his breastplate for war. He took his sword and he came out of the house saying, Bismillah wa billah wa fi sabilillah. Jihad. Muslim bin Aqil, the first shaheed of Imam al-Hussein. The narrations mention Muslim bin Aqil came out of the house and he began to attack the 300 horsemen, attacking them from the right and attacking them to the left until he killed 140 of the kuffar. The narrations mention the strength of Muslim bin Aqil was such that he could lift the person and throw him on top of the rooftop. Muhammad ibn Ash'at sends a letter to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. He says to him, O Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, send us a reinforcement. Indeed, Muslim bin Aqil has killed half our men. So Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sends a letter back to Muhammad ibn Ash'at. He says to him, and how can one person kill 140 of ours? Muhammad ibn Ash'at writes back to him. He says to him, oh man, you have sent us to Muslim bin Aqil, a lion from the lions of Bani Hashim, a defender from the defenders of Bani Hashim. He is not one of the greengrocers of Kufa. For if you want victory over him, then send a reinforcement. The narrations mention that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sends a reinforcement of 500 horsemen to attack Muslim bin Aqil. They attack him from every direction. Muslim bin Aqil defends himself, killing the kuffar and sending them to Jahannam. When they were not able to capture and they were not able to defeat Muslim, they went and they climbed the rooftops. Ya Shi'at Amir al-Mu'mineen. They began to throw stones on Muslim bin Aqil. They began to lit fire. They began to light firewood and they began to throw burning pieces of wood on Muslim bin Aqil. He said to them, O people, if you are not honorable or not courageable, if you do not have enough courage, then at least be honorable in your war. They began to attack Muslim bin Aqil from every direction. He kept fighting against them until they decided to dig a hole in the ground and they covered it up with leaves and sand. As Muslim bin Aqil got closer, he fell into the pit of the dig hole that was dug in the ground. Bukair came and he struck Muslim bin Aqil with a spear on his side. Allah, Allah, wa Muslima. They captured Muslim bin Aqil, they tied him. They tied him with ropes. They took him towards Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. These are the final moments of the life of Muslim bin Aqil. Ya Shi'at Amir al-Mu'mineen, put your hands on your heart and weep over the tragedy of Muslim. The narrations mention that they brought Muslim bin Aqil to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. He said to the Muslim, why is it that you disunited the Ummah? Muslim says that in fact I came to unite the Ummah over Imam al-Hussein. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad insulted Imam Ali. He started to dispraise Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, insulting them using foul language. Muslim bin Aqil says, indeed you are the one who is more deserving of abuse. At that time Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad says to him that I will kill you the worst of deaths. I will kill you in a manner that no other person has been killed. Muslim bin Aqil said, if this is the case, I have been praying to my Lord for shahada. They took Muslim bin Aqil to the very top of the Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad commanded one of his army to come and strike the head of Muslim. They tied his hands. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Muslim bin Aqil turned towards the side of Karbala. He cried out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. He looked towards Allah and said, Ya Allah, ihkum bayni wa bayna man khadaluni. Ya Allah, you be a witness between me and judge between me and those who deceived me. The enemy raised his sword. He struck Muslim bin Aqil on the head. Wa wayla, wa muslima, wa ghariba. The head of Muslim was separated from his body. They took the body of Muslim bin Aqil and they threw it from the top bones in the body of